on behalf of Sustainable Development Policy Institute. I welcome you all to today's webinar on Pakistan's electric vehicle market, challenges, opportunities, and the 2030 agenda. So this webinar has been organized by SDPI under the auspice of its Network for Clean Energy Transition. My name is Ubaidur Rahman, and I'll be moderating the discussions today. So once again, I welcome you all, especially our distinguished speakers today, where we have been joined by Engineer Asim Ayaz, who's currently working as the General Manager at Engineering Development Board. We will be shortly joined by Dr. Naveed Arshad from Lumps Energy Institute. We do have Dr. Azir Ahmed Khan with us. He is the Director of IECE at University of Lahore. We have colleagues from Shell Parks Private Limited joining us. We have Ms. Middat Waris, who is the Fuels Marketing, Pricing and E-Mobility Manager at Shell Pakistan Limited. And we have also been joined by Mr. Numan Ahmed, who is the Facilities Engineering Manager at Shell Pakistan Limited. From the public sector, we have also been joined by Mr. Abdul Hadi, who is the Head of Automotive Electronics Department at the National Institute of Electronics. So I'll be introducing each one of them further in detail, but before we go into the discussion, let me set some housekeeping rules. Along with Zoom, the event is being live streamed on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. The speakers are encouraged to switch on their cameras, especially when they're speaking, if their network allows them to do so without any disruptions. The event is being recorded and the video will be posted online. You're all feel free to revisit the discussion later and feel free to share it with your networks as well. We definitely invite questions from our audience and colleagues at the end of the session or as the session goes. Please feel free to write them in the chat box or in the Q&A box on the right side. And if you want to actually speak, please feel free to raise your hand as well. Now, okay, we have also been joined by Dr. Naveed now. So now, coming to the discussion in hand, I believe many of us gathered here for, very similar dialogue almost 2 years back on the similar platform with the purpose to understand what challenges we need to address for developing the electric vehicle market in Pakistan. So what has been done since then to address the regulatory and other barriers, but now again in 2024, we stand at a very critical point where we are going through an economic turmoil, socio-economic crisis, and many challenges have come up that hinders the progress of EVs in Pakistan. Now, definitely, theoretically, EVs make a very perfect sense if we see that it's actually going to help Pakistan manage its fossil fuel import challenge due to its high cost, the reduction in GHG emissions, and urban pollution issues as well, and many more. But however, a number of steps needs to be taken if we are to ensure its step-by-step progress. So basically, in the backdrop of these challenges and opportunities that actually exist for the electric vehicle market, SDPI has been taking this agenda forward. And one of the key promising side that actually came forward was the electric vehicle and their presence in the manifestos of the mainstream political parties as well. And this is basically one of the reasons we have organized this dialogue, because SDPI has been called multiple times to deliberate on the agenda of EVs in Pakistan and what perhaps we should be calling a realistic way forward for the electric vehicle industry growth. So, but before any further ado, we have a lot of experts. Let me very quickly invite Dr. Khalid Walid for his quick opening remarks, and then we'll be coming to Dr. Naveed for his keynote address. So, with this, Dr. Khalid is currently working as a research fellow at SDPI. So, over to you, Dr. Khalid. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ubaid. I hope I am audible. Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, starting from Dr. Naveed, Dr. Azir, Ms. Midhat, Abdul Hadi Saab, Numan Ahmed, and Sajil Saab, and obviously Engineer Asim Saab. These participants, these speakers, they sort of present a whole bouquet of policy management and implementation sort of framework for Pakistan's EV. As Ubaid has rightly mentioned, that this is not only about sustainability in energy anymore. It is sort of an economic solution and environmental solution embedded with this energy planning. What we need is an integrated energy plan so that we are not just solving our energy problems, but we are building an economic case and we are strengthening our economy as well. Just to put some numbers on monthly basis, if you see the trends are in terms of imports and exports, Pakistan on monthly basis import about 1 billion USD worth of petrol and fuel. If we save about 30% of it, it is about 300 million USD per month, which can translate into annual saving of about 3.6 billion USDs, which is equivalent to or more than the SBA program given by IMF. By reducing only 30% of it, we can save money foreign exchange worth about a IMF program. So this can potentially solve our Pakistan's economic woes as well. In terms of electric vehicle, I would say that back in 2016-17, when this debate was policy debate was started, and Pakistan sort of drafted its first policy in 2019, that was National Electric Vehicle Policy. Although we understand that there is an economic case, there is an environmental case, but still we face lacunas and policy inconsistency in terms of achieving those ambitious targets that we set in national electric vehicle policies. So what we are gathered here to debate what are different policy bottlenecks and what are different implementation lags, either they are inside lags or outside lags, we need to address what are different sweet spots between custom duties and sale tax, what would be the sort of status of local assembly lines and manufacturing sort of processes. Another very important thing that may be missing in the policy debate right now, although we have built it, we worked on it, that was the auto industry development and export plan. This is very essential if we want to have this a broader ambit or broader implementation framework for RE. Just to quickly set the scene, or just to highlight some of the challenges that we studied or we see in a broader era of this complexity around EVs supply chain, particularly in Pakistan. Maybe first one is obviously the major bottleneck comes in terms of high upfront cost because the capital is involved. We need foreign direct investments coming into this sector so that we can sort of build the assembly line, build this supply chain mechanism, and make a effective economic case for EV development in Pakistan. Second, maybe more consumer related, is that there is a range anxiety and charging infrastructure sort of issue, which sort of create hurdles in terms of creating demand in Pakistan for EVs. Again, if you link it with national grid system, where the electricity would come from, that is another debate to have, whether we would be able to sort of manage that capacity that would be flowing in if we develop this mass EV production facility and general public sort of take it as a mainstream element in Pakistan. So this is another challenge. Second, I would say another challenge in terms of EV development in Pakistan is that there is limited model variety and availability. Fifth one is skilled workforce and EV maintenance. Policy inconsistency and regulatory challenges. Obviously, they are at every department, every entity in Pakistan. Lastly, I would say finances and loan accessibility is very important for Pakistan, so that Pakistan can build this economic case and we can sort of have this affordability, particularly for two-wheeler and three-wheeler. Before ending it, I would say that the integration plan, the integrating all the sectors into this is very important, starting from the raw materials that is we need for the batteries in terms of green minerals, cobalt, lithium, etc., up to the market vulnerabilities and market challenges. These can be solved through integrated plan. not working in these silos. So what we need to do is we need to sort of have this ownership coming from the government, but private sector kicks in, private sector join in, and we have this effective sort of plan through media and through awareness. We can have this implementation in Pakistan. Looking forward to a very effective and uh, targeted debate around this. With this, I thank you all again. Welcome to STPI's policy webinars. Back to you, Ben.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Khalid, for setting the scene, highlighting some of the challenges and how it actually makes a very strong economic case for Pakistan, especially when we're talking about the high cost of import associated with the fossil fuel products as well. So I think with this, you have very rightly set the scene. Let me invite Dr. Naveed Arshad from LUMS Energy Institute. Dr. Naveed is currently the Associate Professor and the Director of National Center in Big Data and Cloud Computing at Lahore LUMS. And I mean, everyone know Dr. Naveed has been taking the agenda of electric vehicles since the start. He's actually one of the experts. So, Dr. Naveed, coming to you, I mean, if you can actually take us to what the current status of Pakistan around the electric vehicles is, and how do you actually see this agenda going forward, or some of the perhaps short, medium, and long-term solutions you can actually propose. So, with this, over to you, Dr. Naveed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ubaid. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, you're
Good.
perfectly audible.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I think you have set the stage right, and Khalid Saab also actually said some of the things I wanted to say, but it's good that he's already set the stage for it. Probably a person like me probably works in the solution space rather than the problem space. So I'll go straight to solutions that why our EV pace has been slow right now, and what can we do about it. So policy came in 2019. We had the incentive in 2020 and 21. It has been almost 3-4 years. So why we have not, you can say, I mean, we have not gone into the space of EV penetration that we would like to see in Pakistan. There are several reasons for it. I think COVID was one which actually impede our progress, but there is another one that hard tech projects actually take time. It is not possible for a hard tech project like a software project to happen overnight. There are supply chain issues, there are dollar issues in the country, there are other issues of manpower and labor force. But I think when I was thinking about it, I thought that in Pakistan, I think EV can make a great case, because we cannot just say that EV are environmentally friendly, they are good, they are zero emissions, very less well-to-wheel emissions, but they are also very economically beneficial to our to the people who are driving them. But then why EVs have not taken up in Pakistan? Khalid Saab said that there are few models available, but even those models have not taken up to that number that we see. I had a chance to visit Malaysia about 2-3 months ago, and I visited one of in fact, their own one utility company that's called TNB. And Malaysia, by the way, has a very, I mean, price of petrol is very, very cheap there. Price of electricity is also not that great. And TNB said that as an electricity company, they look at EV as their next business, large-scale business, because they said most of the customers are moving to solar energy, but EVs present a new business opportunity for us. And while there are very few EVs in Pakistan, what they said that by 2025, which is just 2 years, 1 year, in fact, from now, they would like to get about 10 million ringgit profit in terms of EV charging infrastructure. So when I looked at Pakistan scenario, we looked at that Ministry of Climate Change gave the goals, Industries and Production gave the policies for the EVs. But I think one sector which have not come up to speed is our power sector. I am at this time sitting in one of our pilot projects in Multan, where we are testing out some three-wheelers, electric three-wheelers. And I mean, although we have good relations with the power companies, still it took us 3 months to get a small transformer installed so that we can charge the three-wheeler. The distribution companies are not looking at it as a new business opportunity. Unfortunately, they are in a downward death spiral. I mean, the distribution companies in Pakistan are in a downward death spiral. This year, we have 50% excess electricity, and our total demand is going down overall in the grid rather than going up. So they have to be the first one to jump onto this opportunity. And what they can do, they should be establishing the charging infrastructure that we need at this time in cities and on highways. and give priority access to all the assets that we have, priority access to connections. NEPRA has to come up beyond just giving tariffs and going into that how can we save these utility companies? They are now a dying breed, and somehow if we cannot save them, they are going to be problematic. So I think what has happened in the past 2-3 years is that the power sector has not picked up. That's number one reason. I believe that's number one reason why passenger cars and other sector has not caught up to that level. In terms of, I think, supply chain, we also face problems. For example, if I want to import a good quality battery from China, from Korea, I have no idea that what that battery quality is going to be. They say that, okay, this is going to work for 2000 cycle, 3000 cycle, but only until I run that one, I may be able to find out that this battery is what they claim to be. Now, in order to avoid that, we need to have a setup where we can test out these batteries when they either, depart from China, or when they arrive soon in Pakistan. We need to have a quality check, because otherwise two problems can happen. One, that low quality batteries are going to shatter the confidence of people. Number two, they can be also safety hazard. And some events like this happen, people's confidence in EVs will just go away, and that will be difficult to reconstruct. So I think on the supply chain level, this battery supply chain is very critical. I think Pakistan is a very unique position where through CPAC, we can get some incentives from China, which no other country can have. And that is that we should be having some local cell manufacturing capability. It's not a big ask. I mean, companies in Pakistan like Fauji or EGTCL, they have the money to set up this kind of infrastructure. And Thailand has done it. They have developed a cell factory, and now every company, every battery pack manufacturing company is getting cells from that factory. So it's a G2G project. It has to go through CPAC or some other government-to-government relationship. But if that happens, I think many of the manufacturers, which are about 37, 38 manufacturers that have got license in Pakistan for 2-3 wheelers, I think they will benefit largely from it. I think another problem is that battery technology is evolving. It requires R&D. It requires a lot of, you can say, investment. There, I think we should have our universities and our research centers who can help the industry in doing so. We have done a modest job at LUMS, where we have developed an e-mobility lab. We have set up a setup where we can test a cell in a battery pack and even have blast chambers and everything. So anything that you want to test for a battery, we can develop that. We can develop small scale battery packs. So I think people can come and they can use that facility that has just inaugurated. On top of that, we also have, or we will have, a motor characterization facility. So in Pakistan, although we have such a large industry of fans and electrical motors, there is no characterization facility. We don't know the fan that I have in my room or a motor that is working in my home for water drawing. What is the efficiency of that motor? Nobody can tell you. So we are going to have a facility where not only EV's efficiency can be tested, but also the testing of any kind of motor that we have. And that's also will be a state-of-the-art facility. So Khalid Saab talked about financing. I am surprised to tell you that there is so much financing available for EVs around the world that a country like Pakistan is, I mean, we don't have to go to the loans of World Bank or IMF to fund these kind of activities. The world is having the money and we can get that. The only thing is they do not want to have the EVs for Pakistan's economic prosperity. They want to have EVs for mitigation potential of it, the GHG emission mitigation. If we can somehow say that, okay, EVs introduction in Pakistan will reduce the GHG emission around the world, that is something where that money is going to come in. I'll just give you an example. There are 28 international funds that give money for mitigation and adaptation in climate change. You know what? Pakistan's maximum money that we have drawn from it is about $179 million. Those funds have money more than maybe $100 billion or something. $179 for a country that has the 5th largest population, second most vulnerable in terms of climate change. And let me give you another surprise that the same amount of money Maldives has also gotten, that has a population of maybe 1 million only. So this is why we are kind of, we say that, okay, where are financing going to come from? Financing is available. We just need to get it. I'll give you an example. There is a fund, you know that the Green Climate Fund, there is Mitigation Action Facility, the Climate Transformation Fund, and many others. They are competitive funds. Anybody who has a good project can go and get the money. I'll give you an example from LUMS. We applied to Mitigation Action Facility. Out of 330 proposals, we were in the top 27 the first stage, and the top 11 the next stage, and now they have to select 5 or 6. Hopefully we'll go there, but even if not, we have got through that experience, and that requires just one thing. If you can just do one thing, we can actually go to those funds and say that we are ready for these projects. That is that how much GHG emissions can you save from your project in year 1, year 5, year 10, year 15. If you can somehow tell them that with an authentic methodology, that money is possible. And there's great projects that we can develop in Pakistan. If you have the GHG mitigation potential calculated, and this is not rocket science, this is very easy methodologies. One can understand them in maybe a few weeks' time. That is where I think we can go to international funds and get money from it, especially in the domain of two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and public transportation. So I think there are opportunities. EV is just writing on the wall. It's just that how fast track we can go, how fast can we run to bring EVs into Pakistan. The challenges, of course, the dollar shortage and other things are there. I just tell you one thing, and then we'll stop and go into the to the other panelists, esteemed panelists, for their input. There is a doubt that if we, let's say, somehow go to EVs, we have to spend more money in the import of batteries, and you can say the amount that we spend on fuel will be equivalent to those of batteries. So we did a calculation for Ministry of Climate Change. They had this question from us a few weeks ago, and we said that, okay, whatever money you spend in EVs, you can, the ticket size originally will be higher. They are expensive batteries. But in 2 years' time, you can actually pay back all that money just in the savings of through the efficiency of EVs. From year 2 onwards, it's just your saving and profits, if you can call them. So over the course of, let's say, the lifetime of a battery, which is 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, depending on how you use it, we can actually save almost 2/3 of the amount of foreign exchange that we originally will be spending on fossil fuel imports. So it's just that we need to have our act right. The power sector has to come in with the charging infrastructure, or somebody else has to chip in that thing, because other than that, nobody from the private sector is going to do that. Very few charging stations are installed. Most companies probably do it for the CSR budget, but not for profitability. Until we have enough penetration of EVs so that charging infrastructure becomes a profitable entity, then everybody will just flock to it. And then we'll have the inflection point. So I think charging infrastructure is critical, financing is critical, and the mindset is critical that EVs is writing on the wall. The faster we go, the faster we can benefit from them. So I'll stop here, Ubaid. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Naveed, for very enlightening remarks. You have very pointed about the challenges, just starting from how the power sector, in particular discourse, should actually see it as an opportunity, and how they have to actually play a very important role. And I think very well points noted around the supply chain and the battery technology issues. And I think later we'll also be requesting Abdul Hadi Saab from National Institute of Electronics to perhaps also respond to these as well. But you've also very rightly pointed out the points you highlighted around the financing and its availability. And this is actually going to be one of the key points that we put forward from this platform to the relevant entities further as well. We fully sure you have also highlighted, but sort of just to further amplify the voices as well. And thank you also for the points you highlighted then around the foreign exchange and how to achieve that critical number as well. So now moving towards panel, we'll first be starting with the private sector and see what challenges they actually foresee when we actually talk about electric vehicles. Some of them have already gone through this process by establishing these infrastructure. And then after will be coming to Engineering Development Board and the public sector to sort of respond to what they have to say and how the government is actually planning to address these. So first, let me come to Ahmed Sajid Saab. Sajid Saab is currently working as the Regional General Manager, North at Dewan Motors, and he has an experience of over 25 years working in the automotive sector. So Sajid Saab, thank you so much for joining us today. And
Thank
so
you
I
very
think
much.
Sajid Saab, a very quick question, if I have to pitch, is that I mean, what are some of the very primary challenges that the investors face when considering investments in the EV sector of Pakistan, and how do regulatory inconsistency sort of hamper these decision making, if they do? And also, if you can very quickly highlight that after working in the sector for so long, how do you see this transition happening place in Pakistan? So if you can also provide quickly some solutions or recommendations from your end as well. So over to you, Sajid.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and my regards and wishes to everyone on the panel and attending through the various social media platforms. Okay, to begin with, thank you very much, like I said, for inviting us, because Diwan has been at the very forefront of the EV revolution, so to speak. Even, as far back as, or as recent as 2016, we were the first ones to put up public charging stations in the country. There were 3 of those, but they were still there. And that was for the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, because we were very cognizant of the fact that the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle was sort of the gateway or the stepping stone for moving from pure internal combustion engines to a purely electric world. In terms of the regulatory environment that you mentioned, unfortunately, as we know, it has been, as with most industries, 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. One understands that there are a number of challenges that the government has to face in terms of the foreign exchange reserves, and which of course primarily derives what we do or do not do in terms of our imports. But at the same time, like a very learned colleague from the LUMS mentioned, that the amount of savings that we stand to gain from encouraging electric vehicles is monumental. You see, I don't exactly remember the figures, but I think our import bill last year was $72 billion, of which roughly $22 billion was petroleum imports. So that is the single biggest hole in our pocket. And we are fortunately at a cusp of a great revolution, as I call it. This is the most revolutionary step in the automotive industry since the horse stopped pulling the cart. And for the last 150 years, we've been being driven in cars driven by fossil fuels. So while it is an acknowledged reality, and our neighboring countries such as China is pretty much leading the whole automotive landscape in terms of electric vehicles, we have other examples. For instance, let's say Thailand, where on the purchase of an electric vehicle, the government actually gives you a 50% rebate or pays you a 50% cashback to purchase an electric vehicle, because everybody understands the impact of fossil fuels. Hamare yahan to it is more a case of the import bill, but even otherwise, the carbon footprint of the non-electric vehicles has been the most significant in damaging the environment. I would also, while I'm from the 4-wheeler industry, I would also perhaps like to draw the attention towards the 2-wheeler industry. We're producing something like 2.5 million motorcycles every year, and that is also, I mean, of the petroleum imports, roughly 85 to 90% of that is consumed by automotives, 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, and 4-wheelers. So the policy has to have some measure of consistency. For instance, when in the case of late 22 till about late 23, when there was a declared and a non-declared ban on imports, it could have been that the electric vehicles were given a certain breathing space, considering that it mitigated our import bill. Similarly, in the event of electric vehicles local assembly, special measures have to be in place. You see, basically, it's a 3-tier or a triangle that comes into place when we talk about the EV industry. It's the cars, it's the battery manufacturing, and the third is, of course, the infrastructure or the ecosystem that supports electric mobility. So neither of those, incidentally, have the kind of support at the moment that could be encouraging to generating, fostering, and maintaining a sustainable EV landscape. Imports are all good, it is great, but at the same time, it has to be converted into an environment and an enabling environment for local assembling. I may be a lone voice here, and I might be drawing the ire of some others, but unfortunately, or fortunately, the automotive industry of Pakistan has been predominantly led and driven by the Japanese manufacturers. Starting with the formation and rolling out of the Suzuki FX in 1984 to this date, it's 40 years and counting. Because they have had a significant impact on the automotive industry till very recent times, and it has been led by the big 3. the names everyone knows. But that somehow, I could be entirely wrong, but that somehow seems to dictate our regulatory framework when it comes to the automotive industry. While we have new entrants from China and Korea, and it is a sort of a blooming industry, not necessarily booming under the current economic circumstances, but there are more choices now. But at the same time, because somehow, curiously, the Japanese have so far averted entering the EV market wholesale. None of the big three, the Toyotas and the Suzukis and the Hondas and the Mitsubishis of Japan, have not yet come up with an EV that could rival, challenge, or pave the way for electric vehicles for the times to come. And because somehow we are, and for understandable reasons, been driven by what the Japanese market has to say or do in relation to what our automotive landscape is, we have somehow remained quieter or not as progressive as you would have liked to be in the EV structure. But I think if you look at the global perspective, EVs are the biggest thing right now. And it is not, I mean, I would hate to say that, but if we continue to follow the Japanese path, for all we know, Japan could be sort of following the example of Nokia. They're still insisting on hybrids. They're still insisting on somehow finding a way to not do EV. But if the entire automotive world has decided to move in one direction, it may not be very sustainable for the Japanese. So we have to, look inwards, think it through, what we're doing in terms of policy and regulatory matters, and it's only a matter of time before the. And I think the Japanese could very well be on the verge of overtaking the rest of the automotive world in terms of sheer numbers, most of which is EV anyhow. I represent Diwan Motors, which represents BMW, and we have seen in terms of our EV numbers from the year 22 to 23, it has been a near 75% increase in volume in just 1 year for electric vehicles, which accounts for roughly 18% of our annual volume. And nobody would have thought in 2020 that of our entire volume, 20% would be EV in 3 years. So that is how rapidly the world is evolving, and we can only delay it. You see, the simple thing is we can only delay it. We cannot avoid it. And you see, the first mover's advantage is always beneficial. And you see, the other thing is there's a bit of a confounding, conflicting outlook towards this. For instance, one has had pleasure of interacting one-to-one with the government corridors on the subject. And while the Ministry for Climate Change is very, very supportive of the EV concept and its implementation, commerce, finance, all of that looks very favorably at it. But you see, it all has to translate into meaningful policy framework, which is enabling, which is sustainable. So that, I think, remains to be the single biggest, not hurdle, but the single biggest element that needs to be reviewed and focused on and worked on in a meaningful way without any further delay. It's like I said, we can only delay it, but we cannot avoid it. And you see, one of the things that has been said to death is that we have this entire infrastructure of CNG stations. I think there's more than 3,500 idle CNG stations in the country, which pretty much have the layout and some amenities and facilities which can be very useful in the way of the EV charging infrastructure. That needs to be, and that can only happen like it was incentivized in the times of CNG. So that alone would because EVs alone are not the answer. The next or the parallel answer to that is the infrastructure. And as the next logical step, it has to be the battery manufacturing, because we're very rich in silica available in Pakistan, which is a single and other ingredients which could be useful, and to sort of also in terms of financing, which is currently at a very high rate, both for investment and for the end user, for EV purchase and for the EV infrastructure. These are a few of the policy elements that perhaps need attention.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Ahmed Sajid Saab. Extremely enlightening, and all points are very well noted around inconsistencies and the overall market perspective that you've given up. I think before coming to Engineer Aslam Ayaz Saab, let me very quickly take Ms. Middat from Shell Pakistan.
I'm sorry,
Ms. Middat-
I'll add one little thing. I'm sorry for interrupting, but you see, one of the things that what has happened is over the recent years, we were also very fixated with certain manufacturers and all the rest of it. But if the recent evidence is anything to go by, the Pakistani market has evolved, the Pakistani user has evolved tremendously. And what was once considered to be inferior products are now being welcomed with open hands, which I do not demean anything or do not wish to put it across that way, but that I mean Chinese. So the Chinese SUVs that have entered the market over the last 4 or 5 years have essentially replaced in a great way what was considered to be the high end of our Japanese local assembled car segment, which is only a reflection of what will happen if the Chinese EVs were to come into this market. And I can tell you, including our group, there are a number of others who are working on that, but need the requisite support from the policy and regulatory side of things.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This point became very well noted. So now let me just very quickly come to Ms. Middat before we go to Engineer Aslam Ayaz Saab. Ms. Middat, from Shell's perspective and given the transformative potential of EVs in Pakistan, could you also, because Shell has also taken initiatives in this regard, could you sort of elaborate on Shell's role and initiatives and additionally, focusing on what are the primary challenges that Shell anticipates or its current electric mobility or in this whole transition regarding any infrastructure development, regulatory compliance, or market readiness? And if I could actually just request initially our panelists to keep their first round of discussion remarks to somewhere around like 5 to 6 minutes, and then we can have further discussion. So yeah, over to you, Ms. Mehta.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Ubaid. I think with your permission, I'll answer the first chunk of your question initially, and I'll invite Mr. Noman, who's on the panel with us, to speak about the regulatory infrastructure challenges that we have. So as far as Shell's current landscape of EV is concerned, right, globally, we're a market leader. Why do I say this? Because we operate roughly 190,000 charge points globally. What this allows us to do is to test a lot of solutions before we actually bring them to the market in front of the consumer. So typically, charging points for customers, comprise of either at home, for which we have Shell Home Solutions, or we have destinations for which we have Shell Destination Charging, and then of course, lastly we have on the go, which is Shell Retail Stations. So in Pakistan, back in 2021, we wanted to pilot the on the go charging. So we ended up, initiating our project to pilot EV rapid chargers within top tier, urban retail sites in Pakistan. And of course, this was done in collaboration with K Electric, and our, of course, intention was to support the government in the energy transition, and of course also to support the EV adoption, right? So somebody mentioned China here. If I look at China, recently we've had Shell's biggest EV station launched, which has more than 250 public charging points. So I think from a data perspective, if I look at it, the sort of support that the Chinese government gives in terms of EV and the sort of support or the infrastructure that is currently available in Pakistan, you can easily draw parallels there, right? So again, back in 21, we launched our first EV charging station commercially available in Karachi. It was called Shell Recharge. And of course, our customers also have the ability to sort of benefit from other value-added services at the station. So we have a very comfortable resting area. Customers can come in and sort of, take benefit of our alliance partners like McDonald's, or even grab a cup of coffee from Shell Select. And then we went ahead to launch 2 more facilities within Karachi. So, and this included the very first one on the Karachi-Hyderabad motorway. So again, our aim as Shell was to stay ahead of the curve, and the idea was to take strategic EV network positions within the country, and also to secure long-term partnerships. So our collaboration with K Electric is one example of that, right? As far as your question of market readiness is concerned, right? So our data shows that COVID was a big enabler, right? So when we all saw in COVID that the fuel supply chain sort of stood at a halt, that is when people suddenly realized that EV is something that, they could potentially transition to as customers or even as, whole economies. So back in 2022, our data showed that out of the entire segment of customers, 10% of our customers want to shift to EV or wanted or express their intention to own an EV vehicle. However, one of the biggest limiting factor right now is the cost of ownership, right? Because in the current tough economic conditions, it becomes very expensive for me to go out and get an imported EV vehicle or as a four-wheeler, and then two-wheelers and three-wheelers generally are not very, there's not a variety of options. We have a couple of major projects underway that are working on it, right? So the total cost of ownership of EVs remains higher than an internal combustion engine, mainly due to high battery cost, right? And however, the operational costs are lower. And then, of course, as Dr. Khalid also mentioned, right, there's a favorable market opportunity, and the market is ready for the introduction of two-wheeler and three-wheeler, vehicles for EV. Why do I say this? Because roughly we have 25 million bikers in Pakistan and 2 million three-wheelers in Pakistan. And if a transition in that segment happens, what this will do is this will necessitate charging battery swapping infrastructure. So if a significant volume of my customers moves to EV, it will sort of really put things into sort of momentum, right? And speaking of infrastructure, I'll just ask Numan to sort of talk about infrastructure and regulatory compliance.
Ms. Mithil, just to quickly interrupt, we'll definitely be coming very shortly to Numan Ahmed Saab as well. But I think just before that, I think initially we can actually go to Asim Ayaz
Sure.
Sahab from the Engineering Development Board, if we can initially wants to respond to things and also give a brief the perspective from the government or the public sector as well. So again, once again, thank you so much for your extremely useful interventions and highlighting what Shell has actually been doing, and also the market aspects that you highlighted. So now coming to Mr. Asim Ayasa, he's currently working as manager at Engineering Development Board and has been dealing with the EV work since long. He has over 20 years of experience. So Asim sir, when we actually talk about the public sector and its stance around EVs, EDB has played a very essential role. Dr. Naveed also highlighted the role around the regulatory intervention. So if you can actually sort of briefly highlight the stance of the public sector on this, and if you have any suggestions or recommendations for the key private sector players who wants to actually come in as well. So with this, over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the chance. And already Dr. Naveed has addressed many of my points because we have been working together. So it's rather easier for me to come to the point right away. First thing, yes, this coordination activity of this policy or the targets, it was with Ministry of Climate Change. And after SIFC's decision, and now EDB under my office, we are also coordinating this efforts for adoption of EV technologies. First thing, we have given licenses to around 34 two three-wheeler manufacturers. Another good thing is you might have heard that many companies, like one of the speakers, Diwan, they are also trying to introduce EVs very soon. Another is Hubco Group, or their BYD is interested in Pakistan. They first want to come in that four-wheeler segment in CBUs. Now, where we failed, I mean, we don't have financing facilities available for our customers. It's expensive as compared to when we come to motorcycles or cars. Due to the batteries, it's far more expensive than the traditional car or motorcycle. In motorcycle segment, it was financed in unorganized sector. We have been working on few schemes, but unfortunately, the numbers are around 17,000 per annum last year. This year, maybe it would be around 30,000. But good thing is that there are certain motorcycles we can see which are purely designed as electric vehicles. I think the adoption will improve, but as Dr. Naveed said, that there are many things to be done by many departments, like they have referred to the power division. We have written to Ministry of Petroleum that let's think of having a charging station at each of the filling stations, because we want ideally to this technology should be available, or this EVs should be operating in every city of Pakistan. So this is also a proposal under consideration. You talked about policy inconsistency. We in Ministry of Industries and Production, we were only looking after the tariff side. And let me tell you that we did not allow even our colleagues who are often short of revenues to change this policy. We are giving one person to the EV specific parts. It would be too technical over here to discuss the tariffs, but the incentives which were given to the electric vehicle segment, rather in this budget, we are proposing two or three other measures, which will be better for the adoption of four-wheeler technology or local manufacturing of four-wheelers in Pakistan. We hope that if that intervention is approved, then there'll be more car manufacturers in Pakistan. Although that, in principle, there may be a challenge or some resistance from the local vendor segment because we are trying to reduce the duty, custom duty further. On EV specific, it would remain same, but on the other parts, if we reduce the duty, the localization gets hurt. But anyhow, having said so, we are, my department or our department, we have helped our 2-3-wheeler segments in registration. It's heavily taxed in Punjab. If you introduce a new variant, we have already taken up the issue with them that they charge 2 million fee for any new variant of EV in 3-wheelers. And then the registration authorities, without any NOC from the PTA or Punjab Transport Authority, they don't allow registration. So in 2-3-wheeler segment, it was the only issue that we think, and rest is financing. In 4-wheelers, charging is a big problem. Financing is an issue. Local manufacturing, tariff for local manufacturing is on the higher side. This is the feedback from the industry. We have tried to solve it by giving we have already presented some recommendation for further promotion of local manufacturing of 4-wheelers. In buses, trucks, the tariff is already there. You might have heard some buses coming in. Let me tell you that on buses, the duty on complete bus is 1%. If you manufacture it locally, you will also get the benefit of reduced sale tax of 1%. Or if you import it, the sale tax will be at the statutory rate, or which is the applied rate, which is 18% nowadays. But we are open to suggestions. We are not saying that there cannot be any improvement. We have compared our policy with Indonesia, with many other countries. Our policy to the extent of tariff is good, but we are lacking in financing facilities and we are lacking in subsidies. Dr. Naveed referred to some funding, but unfortunately, Ministry of Industries and Production, we are looking after manufacturing. This funding, if it has to be arranged, it can be arranged by Ministry of Climate Change or any other forum. We'll welcome, as manufacturers would want that we should have more and more facilitation for this sector. I'm sorry, I had to leave for a meeting at 12. So I requested that for the early time. If you have any quick question, you can ask. I'll close it here. And we are open to any type of suggestions. And obviously, we have been working closely with LUMS and you people for giving and the industry, of course, for giving the recommendations, etc. And as we have achieved our goal in 2-3-wheelers, in terms of giving the licenses only, adoption is still to come. And for the 4-wheelers, we are also looking forward that what else we can do. For charging, it's the domain of petroleum. We will be recommending again and again, and it has been taken at the highest level in the government. and I normally represent those meetings. Everybody has a will. This is one good thing. Earlier, when we started in 2020, the things were not very clear. Dr. Naveed and from the academia side, and myself from Engineering Development Board side, used to spend much time on convincing the people that this is the technology which would be better for us. With this, I'm open for any quick question. So thank you very much for inviting me. We'll be in touch. And if you have any question or if any manufacturing concern is coming to Pakistan, and if I think our department is giving good facilitation, but we can always improve. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Asim Saab, for very well highlighting. I think that some of the very key points that I'm taking from your remarks is that perhaps better coordination between the relevant ministries as well. I mean, Ministry of Industries and Production, the climate change needs to, along with other relevant departments, should work perhaps more closely for its effective implementation. As for the quick question, I think Dr. Azhar wants to highlight very quick question to you. And yeah, so over to you, Dr. Azhar, please.
Assalamu alaikum, Ya Sab. Thank you very much for taking the time and for, doing this so quickly and everything. I do have one question. When it's mentioned about when you're, for example, the imports of batteries or cells and everything, there's always this misunderstanding that they say that yes, when vehicles are coming in, like CKDs or CBUs, is at 1%. But if you're a local manufacturer or you're not a registered, let's say, automotive manufacturer yet, there's still a lot of higher duties and taxes on the import of batteries and cells. Could you just clarify, is that right or wrong? And shouldn't these local manufacturers be given the same kind of 1% incentives for importing batteries inside?
Thank you for it's a very pertinent question. In this budget, we have not only for the batteries for EVs, batteries for solars, batteries for other applications like mobile phones, and batteries for EVs, of course. We have already proposed a regime for local manufacturing because we have to maintain cascading. But earlier, when we were giving this EV policy, there were two choices. Either if to give a cascading tariff structure for assembly of batteries. And in that case, if we would have taken the battery from 1% to say 5%, it would have been more costlier for the importers. But for this, we have given a proposal in budget for local assembly of batteries, either by a common man or by an OEM or by any other new company. And batteries for all applications other than lead acid, like lithium-ion battery is normally used or graphene battery is used. We have given the proposal in this budget for local assembly at the premises of OEM or by another company or a vendor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Asim Saab. So I think it has been a wonderful discussion till yet. So thank you so much for your remarks. And if you have any further questions, we'll definitely make sure to send them to you over the email as well. And you can also respond. We already had one question in the chat. We'll be taking a bit later. But now let's move towards a second theme on what consumers think around EVs and what should be a comparatively more realistic plan for EV industries in Pakistan. Let me very quickly first invite Dr. Azhar, and then I'll be coming to Numan Saab since you've also been dealing with this. So Dr. Azhar is currently working as the director of Integrated Engineering Center of Excellence at University of Lahore, and he has working experience for over 30 years and is actually one of the leading experts on the development of an EV ecosystem on distributed renewable energy, dealing with the fiscal and incentive plans for EVs as well. So Dr. Azhar, in your perspective, I mean, how do you think electric vehicles economically viable for Pakistan from a socio-economic standpoint, and what do you think should be a realistic outlook for achieving the adoption of EVs within the country? And Dr. Azhar, feel free to highlight any other points that you feel relevant to this discussion, particularly around an EV ecosystem in Pakistan that you have been working around. So yes, over to you, Dr. Azhar.
Thank you very much. I'll try to keep it within 5 minutes. I'll put on a timer so that we can do that. So There's a lot of good things that have been said by everyone. I mean, Dr. Naveed, I know, and Hadi Saab, I know just by everybody who's talked to me about them. Hadi Saab, I think you know Abdul Rahim Bhatt, so we'll be talking later on about that anyway. I'll just go back a little bit. Thank you for the really good introduction. However, I've been working in the automotive industry in Europe. I just came back to Pakistan about three and a half years ago. Over there, I worked with Mercedes and Volvo and Bentley in their technology development sides and all. And the main thing that what I was involved in is in the development of quality assurance in production. These are the two things that in discussions and everything are usually lacking. When somebody says that, yes, we're going to manufacture something in Pakistan, yes, there's this group who can manufacture something and all that thing. We usually leave this quality program in the automotive industry. It's called APQP, which is like automotive product and quality programs. We usually leave that to the foreign companies outside. For example, the Japanese, the Chinese, and all Europe, they all have these quality and production structures and everything. And what happens is that because of that, we do not develop that within Pakistan itself. So when we say Pakistani manufacturers and everything, we a lot of times you mean Pakistani assemblers or Pakistani like importers or component manufacturers who use the quality program of a company itself. So what I'm leading to in this starting discussion is that the outlook for manufacturing when we talk about EVs, it's a new industry throughout the world, and it's a lot of based on the electronic components and the development of structures, the vehicle architectures and the electronics architectures. And like Dr. Naveed says that these are the two things that in Pakistan we can do very, very quickly and very, very fast. And their organizations, such as our own organization, we developed our own battery management systems. We actually developed even our own testing dynos and all, and also supervisory controllers, understood controllers, and all. The reason for that thing is that, as it was mentioned somewhere over here, that if we leave all of these development technologies and how it's developed to foreign companies, such as coming from anywhere, it could be from Japan, from China, or wherever, then we will still not develop. And currently, in the stage that we are in Pakistan, the EV industry needs to not do the same thing that the automotive industry did, but call itself something new and start, because we have that edge and we have that facilities to do so. So let me go back to your question, and then I'll try to wrap all of it. When it comes to the socioeconomic thing, that is it's a very, very hard word. It's a very, very interesting word. When it comes to the adoption of EVs, especially in two-wheelers and three-wheelers, socioeconomically, there is a social class that will benefit the most. And that is the middle class, the lower middle class, and the worker class, because they travel the most. I mean, office-going people travel in their cars and everything about 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers on average. However, people who have shops, who have to go, the artisans or workers who have to go work, they do about 80 kilometers to 120 kilometers if we include bike kiosks or delivery services and everything. So socioeconomically, electric vehicles has a huge impact on this class, and which is one of the largest class, because there's 26 million motorcycles in Pakistan, whereas there are 4 to 8 million four-wheelers in Pakistan as well. So there's a big divide of who comes out good on that thing. The second thing is that the price of our air, the air quality, and our environmental hazards, which is taken in pounds. I mean, the US just increased theirs to 190 $1 per carbon dioxide emissions, per ton of carbon dioxide emissions and everything. They're the biggest beneficiaries. This is words that I always like. That Dr. Fayaz from LUMS always says that we, sitting inside our houses and everything, can double glaze our windows, can shut everything down, and we can mitigate our own climate and the impact of climate on us, but the socioeconomic group cannot. And then the third is that because of the high travel cost, there's the largest amount of petrol that is being used. There's 24% of all emissions is from motorbikes, and about 60% of all petrol is being used by bikes. Again, is that. So what's the outlook? That's the second question that you just asked. We just heard from a lot of, we just heard everything good. And we heard really good stuff. I mean, we like Dr. Naveed said, I mean, let's talk about the solutions. Let's leave the problems to others. I'll bring in a few of that thing just to add to certain something of that. The biggest problem that we are facing, the realistic outlook, I will say, is a transition period where we are trying to transition from fossil fuels into a complete electric vehicle. And this is the same for anything, for gas, we're trying to transition out of gas, we're trying to transition away from coal into renewable energies. It's the same for the automotive industry. But we are in a bit more precarious position when it comes to that thing. The biggest one is the EV industry itself. All of us sitting over here, not just the 38 manufacturers or like industries or the public sectors or the academics, is the fact that we do not have a unified voice just yet. I hear a lot of people giving their personal opinions and everything. I say we have to take every single person's opinions. If somebody says, let's import from China, I say we need to do that. If somebody says, let's incentivize local manufacturing, yes, that we have to do as well. We just have to balance every single word. I know Hadi Saab is going to probably talk about these things, like what about development inside or bringing in from China directly and everything. The biggest outlook, let's say, issue that we're having is the media, which is pushing a nonchalant narrative of this thing, which is like, they attract more attention when you have pani se chalne wali gaadi, ya wo sabse choti gaadi, ya sabse badi gaadi, ya Pakistan ki sabse pehli gaadi and everything. Or students ne dekhen ji ye electric vehicles bana diye. It sounds as if it's the same thing jo ke jis tarah wo jis ek bande ne wo hawa se chalne wali gaadi bana di thi, ek ne ye kiya tha. The perception of the buyer is still, yeah, this is a novelty. It's not a viable product yet. So these are things that as an EV industry, I think we have to go. The outlook, I would say, is positive. It's transitional. We're talking about retrofitting. We're talking about hybrid things. I mean, registration ka jisna EDB ne kaha tha, if you can't register it, we can start converting vehicles, just like the CNG model. CNG stations, किसी ने बताया था कि 1300 या 3000 हैं. We can convert them to electric and all. So government policies हैं, चलते हैं, सब कुछ हैं. We can't just go with those incentives. I like what Dr. Naveed said. कि basically we need to make sure that we can get this funding and everything, and this funding should lead towards direct private funding for running these systems, not just to run a pilot projects or stuff like that. So I like that thing.
Yes.
So there's a lot of other things I will say, but I think I'm way above my time. So thank you very much.
No worries, Dr. Azad. It was wonderful hearing from you, and very good points you highlighted around and how we need to be realistic about what we're actually thinking. And thank you for giving those suggestions. So let me come to Noman Saab, because when you actually raised the point of the consumer's perception as well. So I think Noman Saab, if you can actually talk about, Ms. Mehta also highlighted you'll be talking to some points, and you have been listening to the debate, and I mean, based on your experience, if you can also kindly highlight your response on the current consumer EV intention and the macroeconomic challenges that the country currently places in this sector. And then we'll be coming to Abdul Hadi Saab for his remarks on the technical side, and then also sort of highlighting to some of the questions that have been raised by Dr. Azir as well as Dr. Naveed. But firstly, coming to Numan Saab, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ben. I hope I'm audible to everyone. So I've been
Yes.
listening the conversation along for the past 1 hour, and it's been a great discussion going on, and we have been discussing the whole landscape of the EV situation, focusing especially on Pakistan macroeconomics and market situations. So I will just not talk about the upstream part of the EV, where the vehicle manufacturing and supply chain and production is being talked about.
Numan Saab, we lost your voice. Numan Saab, I believe there has been some connectivity issues at your end, perhaps. So I think just in the interest of time, we can actually go to Abdul Hadi Saab first, and then we'll come back to Numan Saab. So Abdul Hadi Saab is currently the head of Automotive Electronics Department at the National Institute of Electronics. So Hadi Saab, you have been listening to the discussion. How do you see the whole agenda of EV transition from a technical perspective? Okay,
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak at this prestigious
Numan Saab,
forum.
if you could just please, Hadi Saab, go for.
Thank you, Dr.
go
Adil
ahead.
Saab. In 2021, we started a project of converting gas engine cars to EV, a sort of a poor man's EV solution where we would convert Suzuki FX, Mehran, Bolan, and several other cars like Sherrod, and we would convert them to electric, primarily because of two reasons. Number one, our converted EV would have zero carbon footprint, no carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and other harmful elements. And number two, the running cost of our converted EV would be exponentially low. And I think there's a huge opportunity for electric vehicles in Pakistan, especially for retrofitting. For example, a normal Mehran would cost around rupees 22 per kilometer, but our converted EV costs around rupees 4 per kilometer. And the cost of transportation has become so high that EV has become the need of time now. Also, the demand and supply, the difference between demand and supply is so huge that even if I book a car today, I'll probably get the car after 6 to 8 months. And if an EV comes with a decent price tag now, I think it would be an instant hit. But in my opinion, the current EV policy is not serving up to the mark. No significant number of increase in number of electric vehicles is seen, nor we have seen major charging infrastructure being installed. And perhaps the biggest, I think, the problem is that the batteries with 45 kilowatt and higher capacities have GST, but smaller batteries have no GST. And I think this would be a huge discouragement for people who are willing to invest in L3 or DC fast chargers, because we all know that DC fast charging only works between 200 to 500 volts. And we also need to have a motor institute in Pakistan so that we can develop our own BLDC motor and controllers and other parts. And we need to have multiple manufacturing facilities for lithium for electric vehicle, because we all know that even for a base variant of a Japanese vehicle, the price of EV crosses 10 million. And the problem is that all of the parts are being imported from China, the motors, the batteries, and unless we develop our own manufacturing facility, the price of EV is not likely to go down. That's pretty much from my side.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Hadi Saab. Yeah, fully agree with your point around the localization, how it has to actually bring down the cost. So now I think coming back to Numan Saab, you sort of the discussion sort of dropped in the middle. If you could actually go on.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that. I think there was some connection issues. Coming back to the point where I was saying that there is a dilemma between on the consumer end, that if they want to purchase a EV vehicle, they are afraid that they might run out of charge at some point of time, and they do not know where to go and recharge their vehicle. So there is a very much need of an infrastructure development on the potential chargers. on ground for the EV vehicles to boom in the industry. So in order to, if we look at the global perspective in developing countries or the developed countries, we see that there is a EV charging facility every 50-kilometer radius for the vehicles to get recharged. So this kind of infrastructure comes with a cost. So one thing is the acquisition of land, which is very difficult in current conditions. When we look at the real estate value of what we have to offer in Pakistan, there is the cost is very high. We do not have any kind of subsidy or policy upon that. So when we talk about putting up a charging station at a destination or on a retail station or acquiring a new piece of land, this comes also with a cost. The landlord requires demands a quite gruesome amount over there. So the economics does not make sense at this point of time because we cannot scale it up. Another thing is that we do not have any kind of a policy available in order for the costing and the charging of the electrons that are going into the vehicles for the recharging. When I talk about the retail station, there is a stage gate of feeder enhancement. So when we talk about with the local discourse, it always becomes a problem to invest into upgradation of the local feeder available or putting up a new transformer, and that time to market becomes so long that it loses its hype and credibility in the way. So in these kind of situations, the investors are not being pulled in at this point of time. So I think there is a requirement of the government to step in with a very firm hand and with a very firm backing to say that this is what we're gonna do, and there is going to be a lot of potential available in the market when we say that we want to have 30% vehicles converted into EV by 2030. So there should be a firm belief in that from everyone involved in the whole process or in the whole supply chain of the system, so that everybody pulls in and do the public-private partnership or private investments, and then only we can have a suitable infrastructure in place to boost up the macroeconomic situation of the EV industry in Pakistan. This is what I wanted to add over here.
Yes, thank you so much, Numan. Sir, very well noted points on what the consumer actually thinks and how we need to actually go about it. So I think it has been very pertinent points have been raised in this discussion. Let me just quickly go to the questions that we have, and I'll be requesting panelists to respond to those. And also, if I can actually request each of our panelists to sort of in very quickly in 1 to 1.5 minute highlight just one key and the most pertinent recommendation that you would actually like to give from this platform, because we'll be converting this discussion into very briefing document that will actually go to all the relevant decision makers and the ministries from this platform. So if they can actually just give us one key solid recommendation, along with definitely we have noted all the points that you have previously highlighted, but something that you really think that needs to going. But so at the same time, I'll be coming one by one, but let me also, if you want to respond to the questions. Firstly, we do have a couple of questions coming around that Pakistan gave a very strong stance under its nationally determined contributions that Pakistan sort of aims to achieve 30% sales share in the sales of electric vehicles by 2030. So the question is, what is the current progress on that, and how do we think, how likely is that target to be achieved? So, I mean, we do understand, but if someone likes to respond to this, I think the point on infrastructure charging stations has already been well established. And the third question we have from Bakir Hussain Saab is that many EV companies in Pakistan right now in the 2 watt and have these Chinese partners. However, they're joining CKD assembly without any plans for localization in the next 2 to 3 years. So how to encourage them to sort of localize? So if our panelists can actually respond to these questions and also sort of take this 1.5 minute to give us just one solid recommendation, I think we'll be starting with Ms. Midhat, if you would like to sort of go first. Yeah, just very quickly in like 1 to 1 minute.
Sure. As far as my suggestion is concerned, I think the suggestion would be to regulate the unit pricing for electricity for a lot of EV stations, because currently a lot of OMCs operate on a cost plus pricing model, which is something that we need a subsidy in to pass that benefit on to the customer, enabling transition.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, very well noted point. And coming to Dr. Azim, I think Dr. Azim, you are very well, most well placed to answer the question how Pakistan is tracking its 2030 target, which really seems unrealistic. But again, just coming to you to respond to that question, and if any points you want to highlight as well.
To answer that question, I would have rather hoped that Naveen Saab would have answered that thing, because we are very far away from the NDC, unfortunately. There is a discrepancy between like what 30% means. According to what I believe and what the national EV policy said, was that it would be 30% of all new electric vehicles that are made. However, sometimes it's gone into like it's 30% of all electric vehicles. So 30% of all electric vehicles is definitely not achievable in 2030, because unless you do something like retroactively fit some of the old ones. So you have to take out old vehicles to put in new vehicles. That's the whole way you can do it. And the same thing goes for when you do for new electric vehicle sales. You can't just increase the amount of EV sales and just make sure that the petrol sales are the same. You're going to have to transition it between those two things. So right now, I think we're nowhere beyond a few percentage. We're not anywhere near 30. Can we get that in 4 years? There is a definite chance that we can do. I think in 2026 or 8, I believe, you might correct me, that we still have the opportunity to renew some of our NDCs. I think all the group over here can, contribute to that thing. As for my one suggestion, what I would say is that I totally agree with Hadi Saab. We need to go for a transition period. I would say let's go for the CNG model, where for reducing the greenhouse gases, you need to replace an electric vehicle with a petrol, it has to be a one-on-one thing. We can put in 5 million electric vehicles, but if the petrol vehicles are the same, it'll be the same greenhouse gases, it'll be the same import. So we need to transition. Fastest is the CNG model, and then slowly we can do all the things that everybody says, like Shell says, or a complete system, and other people say bring in more people, local manufacturing and all.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Azim. Very well noted. If I can now come to Ahmed Sajid Saab. Ahmed Saab, again, if you can also sort of briefly respond to the question around the two-wheelers and the Chinese partners, how they're joining CKD without any plans for localization, and how we can actually encourage them to localize. So Ahmed Saab, are you with us? I think we can come to Ahmed Saab a bit later. Let me just very quickly. We have also been joined by, let me quickly say that we have also been joined by Malik Arsalan Saab, who is joining in place of Dr. Naveed. We'll be requesting him to respond later, but coming to Abdul Hadi Saab first. Abdul Hadi Saab, please. Go ahead. Yeah.
I think we need to facilitate investors for local manufacturing of motors and batteries. And we need to encourage retrofitting, because we all know that the price of the initial investment on electric vehicles is quite high. It goes above 10 million. And we also need to encourage retrofitting, and we need to invest in training programs as well, because we need to have a trained manpower before the EV industry can flourish. So this is...
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Ahmed Sajid Saab. So, Salam sir, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any points to sort of add on to, or anything you actually want to pitch, you have been working on this domain for a long time as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Obed, for the invitation. So I have 3 points, as Dr. Naveed mentioned earlier. So I would rather focus on 3, you can say, fields which government should, you can say, have eye on that. First is to incentivize the local industry, because we met with a lot of stakeholders in the EVs, and they said that just take a land cost, for example, to deploy a factory for manufacturing 2-wheelers or 3-wheelers. They said the land cost is one of the major costs in deploying the whole value chain. So why not government should, you can say, propose a plan to introduce those manufacturers into special technology zones where they have the subsidized rate on the lands, and they can also you can say provide incentives in terms of import duties, raw materials, and all those things, which can ultimately lead to, you can say, less cost available products in Pakistan. Because currently, if you see, the uptake of lower EVs due to the high price of the EVs. Secondly, I would say that government can take initiative of taking EVs in the country. For example, why not government should buy EV rather than an ICE vehicle for the departments? That's a very, you can say, good initiatives, that why not government should buy EVs for their own use. And this will actually give confidence to the people of the Pakistan that, okay, we have the footprint of the EVs, and government is also using those vehicle as well. So this will also uptake the EV, you can say, penetration in Pakistan. And lastly, we must develop the capacity building in tapping those climate financings available, because there's a lot of climate finance available. I was in Geneva last 2 weeks before, and I met with the different, you can say, climate financing departments available in all over the world. And they said that Pakistan has one of the lowest share in tapping those funds. So we must have to develop the capacity building in writing proposals, writing, you can say, projects with the suitable financial models and methodology. And I mean, again, you have to show just the mitigation potentials, that what you're gonna do with the EVs. That's my point. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Salam Saab. Extremely very well noted and very pertinent points, all three of them. So we'll definitely be discussing this further in detail later on. I think HCP has also been working with a couple of Chinese stakeholders on this particular on the SEZ part, and we'll definitely be taking in you in loop as we move forward with that. So with this, if Numan Saab, if you have very quickly anything to highlight, and then I'll be coming to Dr. Khalid for finally concluding this.
Thank you, Beth. I would just rather highlight the fact that we need to establish milestones for us to achieve the targets. It's very simple. Without having milestones developed by the public-private partnership, we will be talking right and left and will not be moving in the right direction. So either it's manufacturing, locally manufacturing or import, or the battery manufacturing or import, or even the infrastructure. People should understand their roles and responsibility and develop their own milestones, and then move in that direction under the umbrella of the government, giving them the benefits to promote and improve the EV landscape for Pakistan. That's it.
Yes, thank you so much. So I think this has been a wonderful discussion from mine. Let me just add very quick one sentence before I actually go to Dr. Khalid. Dr. Khalid, taking lead from one of the questions which Muin Batle Saab has mentioned in the chat box, that the government needs to be given an EV industry promotion proposal from the private sector and academia side. And how can that be put together? So I mean, if you could also sort of end that, including this, including remarks starting from Dr. Naveed, who very pertinently highlighted the challenges and how we actually need to come together. Then Ms. Mithad, Sajid Saab also highlighted some very pertinent points, and Asim Saab also responded to the policy inconsistencies there are. I mean, just all the points that each of the panelists have highlighted. How do we actually put all of this together? What needs to be sort of the very quick and brief way forward for any civil society organization such as SDPR or any think tank to take this agenda forward and work on it. So with this, over to you, Dr. Khalid. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ubaid, and thank you so much, everyone, for this insightful and enlightening discussion. I was a bit of skeptical about EV development, but after this debate, I'm quite sure that we would get there. Borrowing the phrase from Dr. Naveed Arshad, that the faster we go, the faster we get there. I think we need to have this sort of attitude and this sort of mentality going on in policy landscape and in development landscape. Naveed Saab rightly mentioned that linking it to the national grid and to the power sector, that there is no demand, or there is less demand than the excess installed capacity. So we need to look for that, and we need to integrate EV development with that as well. look for the renewable energy financing, climate financing as a financial enabler for EV development in Pakistan. Then Sajil Saab, very pertinent and very to the point, mentioned hybrid electric vehicles as a way forward, regulatory environment, hurdles in them that we take one step forward and two step back in terms of regulatory environment. Regulatory environment is not facilitative sort of environment in Pakistan, and then local assembly, battery manufacturing, and how we can install this enabling infrastructure in Pakistan to generate more EV development, fostering it, and then sustaining it as well. Because sustaining it would be very a key part of it. Just to give you an example of CNG generated at a very fast pace, fostered through private sector, but sustaining it was a crucial thing. So we need to have a policy of EV so that it can sustain for long term. We need to take care of that as well. Ms. Madad very rightly pointed out that private sector, particularly Shell, through its home station charging solutions and destination sort of charging solution, we need these two mechanisms, particularly taking into account Pakistan's rooftop solar development and installation pace. We need to have these home solution as well as the destination solutions. Engineer Asim Saab mentioned the problem of registration, certification, and collaboration among the departments for the permits. SAFC has a very effective or central role to play if we want to ensure credibility, confidence in the market, and we make sure that all the relevant departments are collaborating for development of EVs. Dr. Azhar, sir, you have been so kind to SDPI, and you rightly mentioned that there is a need for sort of establishing a balance between importing the inputs and sort of developing domestic supply chain or the indigenous supply chain in Pakistan, because the fierce competition we face from China that may hurt Pakistan's nascent indigenous supply chain industry. So we need to sort of establish this balance. Hadi Saab is very right that we need to, if we want to take into account our ambitious target, we need to start from the retrofitting. Retrofitting not in the sense that we develop technical facilities. We need to sort of bring in the retrofitting into our financial models as well. Maybe bring your fossil fuel powered two-wheeler, three-wheeler to the banks as a collateral, and then apply for the financing facility for EV. Maybe that could be very operational sort of way, and then those fossil fuel powered collateral bikes or vehicles can be retrofitted and then bring it back to the market. That may have a practical solution to it. My point as a concluding remarks would be that Pakistan needs to, just like Dr. Naveed mentioned, that we need to explore these RE financing and climate financing sort of initiative. One fine example is Just Energy Transition Partnerships, where South Africa made this holistic sort of plan of 80 billion USDs, out of which 26 billion USD plan is just for the EV development and transportation systems, so that they can have this transition not only in power sector, but at the transportation sector as well. So Pakistan need to have this integrated energy planning going on. And based on that, we need to sort of formulate this Just Energy Transition Partnership plan. Second, my point would be, as a concluding, that Pakistan needs to have this sector coupling sort of thing going on, particularly for wind industry. Wind industry in Pakistan, they face curtailment. They face a plethora of issues based on the base load argument that fossil fuel based power plants they need to be run at continuously. And whenever the curtailment happens, wind industry is one of the forefront that faces this curtailment. So we need to sort of have these community or distributed generation sort of systems linked with the transportation sector, where we sort of argue in favor of sector coupling, P2V, that is power to vehicles. That could be very actionable thing for Pakistan, particularly for wind sector. Third would be the balance between ensuring that and acknowledging the comparative advantage of Chinese firm in terms of supply, and then keeping that introspection in mind, sort of thing that what Pakistan could develop as a indigenous sort of EV industry in Pakistan. If this is the cost and benefit analysis does not support it, Pakistan should not develop this sort of indigenous resources. We may import from the Chinese, but in terms of charging infrastructure, CNG is example. When there is money, there are returns. The private sector kicks in, jumps in. They at their own develop these infrastructure sort of things. So we need to have this policy direction right, and then we can expect that private money would flow in. Lastly, we need to sort of have this one window facilitation for EV, because this is a nascent industry in Pakistan. Tariff, regulatory, infrastructure development, and trade of EV related, all the policies, they should come under one window facilitation. All the stakeholders, they should join their heads and make a holistic policy so that we can have this broader discourse of EV development in Pakistan. One very effective way to do this is to capacity build the public sector, particularly the parliamentarians. If there is an ownership from the parliament, we can sort of have this into our national agenda of Pakistan. Lastly, very important, we need to sort of link EVs with our public transportation system, particularly the mass transit systems. My personal opinion, that EVs through online taxi services, maybe those services can invest in EVs, and then we can have this these coming into mainstreaming. So with this, I would like to thank you, all of you, the audience as well, very active in terms of participation and questions. In terms of a question from Bartley Saab, I think Pakistan need to have this integration, not only in terms of public and private partnerships, but industry, academia, research, and policy integration is very important, because academia is about 10 to 20 years ahead in their research, and policy makers, they are sort of 10 to 20 years lagging. So need to reduce this gap so that we can have these I would say policy lag reduced, and we can have this effective implementation. Thank you so much, everyone. Back to you.
No, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It has been a wonderful discussion, and we're running out of time, so we'll get back to you with some of the key recommendations and takeaways we have from this webinar. It would be very brief, a 1.5-page document with concrete points, so you'll be able to quickly go through it, and then we'll be disseminating it. So once again, thank you so much for everyone for joining us today and your wonderful interventions. Thank you. Bye-bye. Allah Hafiz.